Why most startups fail. Level B. 2 upper intermediate. When we think of startups, we often imagine young, ambitious entrepreneurs building the next big thing in a small garage. It's the image made famous by companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Google, all of which started from nothing and grew into global empires. The idea of creating a startup has become a modern dream, a symbol of innovation, freedom, and success. But behind that dream lies a harsh truth. Most startups fail. In fact, according to research, about 90% of startups don't survive beyond their first few years. Some never even launch properly. Others grow for a while, get investments, and then collapse suddenly. Why does this happen? If we live in such an innovative world full of opportunities, why do so few succeed? The answer is complex. It's not about bad luck or even lack of talent. Most startups fail because of a mix of psychological, economic, and strategic mistakes that repeat over and over again. In this story, we'll explore the real reasons behind startup failure and what we can learn from those who didn't make it. The illusion of the big idea. Every startup begins with an idea. It might be a new app, a device, or a service that promises to change the world. Founders often fall in love with their ideas. They believe they found something unique that no one else has thought of before. But here's the trap. Ideas are easy, execution is hard. Thousands of people might have the same idea, but only a few can turn it into a successful business. Many startups fail because they focus too much on the product and not enough on the problem they're solving. A common mistake is building something that people don't really need. Entrepreneurs think, "This is cool, people will love it." But in reality, most customers are busy, practical, and often resistant to change. Unless a product clearly solves a pain point, something that makes life easier, cheaper, or better, it won't survive. As investor Paul Graham once said, "The best startups don't start by trying to think of a good startup idea. They start by trying to solve a problem they themselves have." In other words, great startups are born not from imagination, but from observation. Lack of market research. Another classic reason startups fail is that they never truly understand their market. Entrepreneurs often jump straight into developing their product, assuming they already know what their customers want. But markets are unpredictable. People's habits change, competitors appear, and sometimes what seems like a good idea in theory simply doesn't fit into real life. A famous example is Google Glass. It was a futuristic concept, smart glasses, that could project information in front of your eyes. The technology was impressive, and Google invested millions in it, but the product failed. Why? Because users weren't comfortable wearing cameras on their faces in public. The company misunderstood social behavior, the psychology of the market. Understanding your customers means more than collecting data. It means talking to people, testing your product in small groups, and adjusting it constantly. The best founders are listeners first and dreamers second. Running out of money. Startups often run out of cash before they reach profitability. This is one of the most common and painful ways to fail. In the early stages, excitement and optimism are high. Founders raise some funds, hire a small team, and start building fast. But without proper budgeting and financial discipline, the money disappears quickly. Many startups overestimate their growth speed. They assume users will come fast and revenue will grow naturally. When that doesn't happen, they find themselves with rising costs and no income. There's also something called the burn rate, how quickly a startup spends money. When the burn rate is too high and there's no new investment coming in, the company faces what's known as a cash crunch. It's like running out of oxygen in the middle of a marathon. That's why financial planning is one of the most underrated skills in entrepreneurship. Passion can start a business, but cash flow keeps it alive. Bad team dynamics. Even the best idea and enough funding can't save a company if the team falls apart. Startups are built by small groups of people working under pressure, uncertainty, and long hours. Conflicts are almost inevitable. Founders often disagree on direction, management style, or ownership shares. Sometimes one founder works harder than others, leading to frustration. Or the team lacks essential skills, for example, having only developers but no one who understands marketing or sales. According to many investors, team issues are the #1 reason startups fail after initial success. A weak or toxic culture can destroy motivation and drive talent away. Good teams communicate honestly, respect differences, and adapt quickly. They balance vision with execution, and ego with teamwork. Ignoring feedback. Another fatal mistake: ignoring feedback from customers and advisors. Many entrepreneurs become so attached to their ideas that they stop listening. They believe criticism means others don't get it. But that's dangerous thinking. The truth is, no product is perfect from the start. Every success story, from Airbnb to Spotify, was built on iterations, meaning they tested, failed, and improved constantly. Listening doesn't mean you must change everything people suggest. It means staying open, flexible, and humble enough to see what works and what doesn't. As Steve Blank, the father of modern startups, said, "No business plan survives first contact with the customer." That's why startups that keep testing, learning, and adapting are the ones that grow while others disappear quietly. The emotional roller coaster. Starting a company isn't just a business adventure, it's an emotional one. Entrepreneurs face stress, sleepless nights, and the constant fear of failure. Many lose motivation when results don't come fast enough. Others burn out from trying to do everything themselves. The startup journey is often romanticized in movies and media. We see the success stories, the glamorous side, but rarely the failures, the debts, and the mental struggles. True entrepreneurs understand that failure isn't the opposite of success, it's part of it. Every failed startup leaves behind valuable lessons. Many founders who failed once later built successful companies precisely because they knew what not to do. Failure, when analyzed and accepted, becomes experience. Timing, the invisible factor. One of the most underestimated reasons startups fail is timing. Sometimes an idea is too early for its time or too late. Being too early means the world simply isn't ready yet. For example, in the early 2000s, there were several startups trying to build streaming platforms for movies. The idea was brilliant, but the internet connections of that time were too slow. Most of those companies disappeared. A few years later, Netflix came in with the same idea, but the timing was right. Being too late, on the other hand, means the market is already full. Imagine launching a new photo-sharing app after Instagram's success. It's possible, but incredibly hard. Timing is something you can't fully control, but great founders are aware of it. They observe trends, listen to technology shifts, and move fast when they see an opening. As entrepreneur Bill Gross once analyzed after studying hundreds of startups, timing accounted for 42% of the difference between success and failure. Competition never sleeps. Even if your product is great and your timing is perfect, there's always competition. And in today's world, it's faster and more aggressive than ever. Sometimes, a bigger company sees your idea and copies it, but with more money and resources. Other times, new startups appear with slightly better solutions. A famous case is Snapchat. It introduced disappearing photos and stories, becoming hugely popular among young users. But soon, Instagram added the same stories feature, backed by Facebook's massive user base. As a result, Snapchat lost a big part of its audience. Competition isn't always unfair, it's just a reminder that innovation never stops. The best way to survive is to stay unique, build a strong brand, and keep evolving. When customers emotionally connect with your brand, competitors can copy your features but not your story. Bad marketing and weak brand identity. Many startups believe that a good product sells itself. Unfortunately, that's rarely true. In a world flooded with content, attention is the new currency. You might have the best product in the world, but if nobody knows about it, it doesn't matter. Marketing isn't just about ads. It's about storytelling. People buy not only what you sell, but why you sell it. Think of brands like Apple, Tesla, or Patagonia. All of them have powerful stories behind their products. Apple sells creativity and simplicity, not just devices. Tesla sells a vision of the future, not just cars. Patagonia sells responsibility and adventure, not just jackets. Many startups fail because they never figure out what their story is. They focus on features instead of emotions. But as marketing experts like Seth Godin remind us, people don't buy goods and services. They buy relations, stories, and magic. Scaling too fast. Growth is exciting, it feels like success, but growing too fast can destroy a startup. When companies scale before they're ready, they often hire too many people, expand to new markets, or spend heavily on marketing, all before proving their business model. The danger is simple. They start burning money faster than they earn it. They assume the early growth will continue forever, but when the market slows down, everything crashes. A well-known example is WeWork, once one of the most valuable startups in the world. It expanded globally at lightning speed, renting massive office spaces and promising a new way to work. But when profits didn't come, investors lost confidence, and the company's valuation dropped by billions. Sustainable growth is about stability, not speed. It's better to move slowly and build strong foundations than to explode quickly and collapse. Ignoring legal and ethical boundaries. Another silent killer of startups is legal trouble. Many founders underestimate how complex laws can be, from data protection and taxes to intellectual property. One lawsuit or government fine can destroy a young company completely. Some startups also cross ethical lines in their hunger for growth. They might misuse customer data, fake reviews, or treat employees unfairly. In the short term, it might help, but in the long term, it destroys trust. Modern consumers care deeply about transparency and ethics. Companies that ignore that will not survive the next decade. The founder's ego. Sometimes the biggest obstacle isn't outside the company, it's inside the founder's mind. Success requires confidence, but too much ego kills progress. When leaders believe they're always right, they stop learning. When they refuse to delegate, the team feels powerless. And when they focus more on fame than on value, the company loses direction. History is full of startups that died because the founder couldn't let go of control. Great leadership isn't about being the smartest person in the room, it's about building a team where everyone feels ownership and purpose. Adapting to change. Technology and society change faster than ever before. Startups that fail to adapt soon disappear. Think of how quickly the world shifted to mobile apps, cloud computing, or artificial intelligence. Companies that didn't react on time, even big ones like Nokia or BlackBerry, lost everything. Adaptation means staying curious, experimenting constantly, and embracing failure as part of learning. It's about evolution, not perfection. Turning failure into experience. While failure sounds negative, in the startup world, it's often the beginning of something better. Many entrepreneurs who failed once later built successful companies precisely because they learned from their mistakes. For example, Evan Williams, one of the co-founders of Twitter, failed with his first company before creating Blogger and later Twitter. Similarly, Elon Musk's first ventures weren't all successful, but they taught him how to build and scale big ideas. Failure, when reflected upon, becomes wisdom. It shows what doesn't work, and that's just as valuable as discovering what does. What we can learn. So, what do all these reasons tell us? That building a startup is not just about creativity, it's about resilience, adaptability, and humility. Startups fail when they don't understand the problem they're solving, ignore feedback and data, spend money too fast, build weak teams, forget to tell a story, or stop learning. But when they get these things right, when they truly listen, plan, and grow consciously, success often follows naturally. The truth is, every successful company you admire today stands on a mountain of past failures. Each mistake taught them something vital. Each challenge shaped their mindset. In the end, success isn't about avoiding failure, it's about surviving it. The human element, leadership, team dynamics, and burnout. Even with a great idea, sufficient funding, and a clear market, many startups collapse because of people, not products. Behind every startup are founders and teams, and their ability to make decisions, handle pressure, and work together often determines success or failure. Leadership in a startup environment requires more than just vision. It demands emotional intelligence, adaptability, and resilience. Many first-time founders underestimate how much energy it takes to lead a growing team while juggling fundraising, marketing, and product development. They may have technical skills but lack management experience, and this mismatch can create chaos as the company expands. Team conflicts are another major source of startup failure. Disagreements about strategy, equity splits, or leadership roles often become toxic. A common scenario is when co-founders start as friends but drift apart under the stress of building a company. Trust erodes, communication breaks down, and eventually, one or more founders leave. Losing a key member early can destabilize the entire startup. Burnout is also a silent killer. Many founders work 12-16 hours a day, neglecting rest, relationships, and health. Over time, exhaustion leads to poor decisions and emotional instability. According to surveys, more than 70% of founders experience burnout at some point in their journey. When leaders lose motivation or perspective, the company's morale drops, and so does performance. Timing. The invisible factor. Timing is perhaps the most underestimated factor in startup success. A product can be too early for the market or too late. For example, virtual reality startups in the early 2000s had groundbreaking technology, but failed because the hardware was too expensive and the internet too slow. 15 years later, similar ideas found success because the world was ready. Bill Gross, founder of Idealab, studied hundreds of startups and concluded that timing was the single most important factor determining whether a company succeeded. Startups that launched before customers were ready struggled to survive. Those that entered just as demand emerged thrived. To get timing right, founders must deeply understand industry trends, consumer habits, and the speed of technological adoption. Predicting these accurately is incredibly difficult, which explains why so many startups, even brilliant ones, never make it. The role of luck. No one likes to admit it, but luck plays a huge role in startup outcomes. The right investor happens to attend your pitch event. A key competitor suddenly shuts down. A government regulation changes in your favor. Conversely, bad luck, an unexpected pandemic, economic crash, or supply chain issue can destroy even the most promising company. While founders can't control luck, they can improve their odds by being prepared and flexible. A team that reacts quickly to opportunities or threats is far more likely to survive in an unpredictable environment. In other words, while you can't control the wind, you can adjust your sails. Failure as a stepping stone. Even though most startups fail, many founders don't stop after their first collapse. In fact, the experience of failure often becomes their greatest teacher. It forces them to face reality, sharpen their instincts, and learn how business truly works. Silicon Valley's culture of fail fast, fail often reflects this belief that failure isn't the end. It's part of the journey. Some of today's biggest companies were founded by entrepreneurs who had previously failed. Evan Williams, co-founder of Twitter, created 2 unsuccessful startups before his breakthrough. Elon Musk's early ventures, including X.com, faced near disaster before merging into PayPal. Arianna Huffington was rejected by 36 publishers before launching the Huffington Post. The key difference between those who ultimately succeed and those who don't is persistence. Successful founders use failure as data, not as defeat. They analyze what went wrong, adapt, and try again with more experience and clarity. Lessons for future founders. After studying thousands of startup postmortems, several key lessons emerge. Start small. Test fast. Don't spend years perfecting a product in secret. Launch quickly, get real feedback, and improve based on data. Solve a real problem. Focus on needs that are urgent, painful, and shared by many. Nice-to-have products rarely survive. Hire slowly, fire quickly. The wrong team can kill even a strong idea. Build a culture of accountability and trust from day one. Know your numbers. Financial literacy is essential. Understand your cash flow, burn rate, and unit economics. Balance vision with flexibility. Be passionate about your goal, but humble enough to pivot when the market tells you to. Protect your health and mental energy. The startup journey is a marathon, not a sprint. Consistent energy beats constant intensity. The future of startups. Smarter, leaner, more sustainable. The new generation of startups is learning from past mistakes. Instead of chasing massive funding rounds or explosive growth, many are focusing on sustainable scaling. This means building companies that are financially sound, environmentally responsible, and socially conscious. Artificial intelligence, automation, and global connectivity are lowering the barriers to entry, allowing smaller teams to achieve what once required hundreds of employees. At the same time, investors are becoming more selective. They now value profitability, ethics, and long-term potential over hype. We are entering a new startup era, one that prioritizes impact over illusion. Startups that survive the next decade will be those that combine creativity with discipline, ambition with empathy, and innovation with integrity. Conclusion: why failure is the price of innovation. In the end, most startups fail not because their founders are foolish, but because innovation is inherently risky. Building something new means venturing into the unknown. It's like exploring uncharted territory. You might find treasure, or you might get lost. But the explorers who keep going, who learn from every wrong turn, eventually draw the maps that others follow. Every failure leaves behind knowledge, tools, and inspiration for the next generation of entrepreneurs. And that, perhaps, is the true legacy of the startup world. A cycle of trial, error, and rebirth that keeps pushing humanity forward. Remember, the question isn't, how can I avoid failure? But, what will I learn when it happens? Because in the world of startups, failure is not the opposite of success, it's part of it.